What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue with our 2025 predictions for the upcoming 2025 college football season. Up next is the USC Trojans. USC coming off a pretty up and down year last year. They were a solid team, just about an average team last year in 2024. They did go to a bowl game, but they finished the year at 7-6. So maybe not the best season under Lincoln Riley for USC, but coming into the Big Ten was definitely a different story. Just a very tough conference. Definitely not really being a contender in your first year is obviously not going to happen. So my thoughts on this team for 2025 before we get into the predictions for USC. Offensively, we know how good they're going to be on that side of the football with Lincoln Riley's offensive background. They should be really good there again. Jaden Mafia takes over at quarterback. We'll see how good he's going to fit well into this system for USC. I think he'll get better and better as the season goes along, and I think he'll do pretty well for this USC team at quarterback. Again, they got so many weapons on the offensive side of the football, and they brought in some players from the transfer portal, so that's how USC is. They do reload in the transfer portal almost every year as well. Defensively, we saw that defense take a little bit of a jump from last year, but I think it's going to come down to the defense in my opinion. If that defense can take an even more bigger jump in 2025, then this USC team could be very dangerous, and they could be a dark horse team in the Big Ten. So, that's what I think about this USC team. Let's now get to the schedule for 2025. And again, here is that schedule for them. Again, the Trojans, they were 7-6 last year in 2024. So let's go game by game, and I'll give you my official prediction for this USC football team for 2025. And their first two games of the year are pretty easy. They got Missouri State and Georgia Southern. Missouri State is an FCS team. I think they're actually now an FBS team in 2025. So that should be a pretty easy win. And then you got Georgia Southern here. A group of five team that, kind of used to be pretty good, but I just don't know much about the group of five teams. Again, I don't really keep up with all these teams that much, especially at the FCS level. But I think USC takes care of business in both of these games. Maybe the Georgia Southern game is a little bit of a slow start for USC, but I think the Trojans grabbed 2 wins here, and I got them starting off 2-0 in 2025 fairly easily. And then they open up Big Ten play on the road at Purdue on September the 13th. Purdue is a team. Barry Odom takes over as the head coach, so maybe they're kind of a little bit better under him, but this is a Purdue team that just has a lot of question marks, both sides of the football, a lot of new faces coming in, and they just don't really have that talented roster just yet. So I think it's going to take some, time for Purdue to get back to where they used to be, before Jet Brom even left this program. Purdue was actually a pretty decent program under him, so I think it's going to take some time for Purdue to get back to where they used to be. So I think USC goes on the road and beats Purdue here on September 13th. I don't really expect a blowout, but I think USC will get the win nonetheless, and I got them starting off 3-0. Then they play Michigan State at home after that on September the 20th. I think Michigan State will be a little bit improved this year. Second-year head coach, obviously. They do got some question marks, especially at the quarterback position with Aiden Chills taking over. But yeah, this is a home game here for USC. Michigan State has to travel out west, so that's definitely going to give Michigan State a little bit of trouble. And I think USC actually wins this game. I think it's a close one, though. Maybe it's close by the third quarter. And then the fourth quarter, that's probably where Michigan State runs out of stamina. And I think USC's defense will step up in that fourth quarter as well. So I think USC gets the win here, and I got them improving to 4-0. Next game is on the road at Illinois on September 27th. I think Illinois is going to be a pretty good team this year. Obviously a lot of experience coming back for this team. Luke Allmeyer returns at quarterback, and they're going to have a pretty good, defense as well. So yeah, there's just a ton of experience for this Illinois team, but I do expect a close game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, where Illinois is definitely going to be the much better team, the more experienced team. USC's got playmakers as well, so they definitely should make this a pretty close game. I think both teams, it will come down to the wire here, but I think Illinois playing at home is probably the difference here. And also, I do trust the experience a lot more for Illinois than I do for USC, even though USC doesn't have a ton of experience, but I think it really does come down to the quarterbacks here, and Luke Almeyer is a quarterback that I do trust a lot more, than Jaden Mavia coming in for USC, so I think Illinois gets the win. I think it's a close one, but I'm going to go with Illinois to get the win, so that gives USC their first loss of the season, and that puts them down to 4-1, and then they get their first bye week of the season before playing at home against Michigan on October 11th. I did my Michigan video not too long ago, and I did say that USC, I think they're going to get the win here and get revenge on this Michigan team from last year. I think it's another close game. I mean, Michigan's definitely going to want to run the football here and waste the clock down to keep that USC offense off the field for as long as possible. But I still think USC playing at home and also Michigan traveling out west, that really tends to give teams some trouble. And I think USC does it. I think USC does pull off maybe some sort of upset here, and I think they get their 5th win of the season. So I got USC getting a big win here, and plus that bye week kind of gives you time to recover, especially after a pretty physical game against Illinois there on September 27th, and then you kind of recover from the travel and everything. So I think USC gets the win. That puts them at 5-1, and then they play on the road at Notre Dame on October the 18th. Of course, a rivalry game. You look back to last year's game, USC lost by a couple of touchdowns. A couple of late turnovers in the fourth quarter kind of cost them the game last year, and that was the thing about USC. They lost a lot of close games last year. Can they win those close games this year in 2025? That'll obviously be a question mark. Notre Dame, they may not be as good as they were from last year, but still, this is a very talented team, and I think they're going to be able to run the football pretty well in this game. I think that probably will be the difference in this one. This is kind of a tough one here to call, but I think Notre Dame playing at home is probably the difference, and also, I think Notre Dame running the football and wearing down that USC defense, and also keeping that USC offense off the field, that's probably going to be the difference. So I think Notre Dame gets the win here by running the football with Jeremiah Love. He could be one of the top running backs in the country, so that's definitely going to be a tough one, but I got Notre Dame getting the win, so that gives USC their 2nd loss of the season. That's going to put them at 5-2, and then they get their 2nd bye week before playing on the road at Nebraska on November 1st. This is a Nebraska team that I think is going to be pretty solid this year. They're definitely not a dark horse team, in my opinion, in the Big Ten, but they do have a proven quarterback in Dylan Raiola coming off a pretty up-and-down freshman season, but I think he will definitely be a lot better this year, and he'll show us the kind of experience that he had from last year. So I think this is a pretty close game. I think this is going to be probably a shootout here because these are two really even offensive teams. Defensively, I think it's also kind of pretty even, but I think Nebraska playing at home is probably the difference. So I think in a close game, I think USC will come up short in this one, so I think the Cornhuskers get the win. This is a 50-50 game, so I think it's a coin flip type game for me. So I got to go with USC getting the loss here, and that puts them at 5-3. So back-to-back losses there between Notre Dame and Nebraska. So that puts USC now at 5-3. After that, it's a home game against Northwestern on November 8th. Northwestern is a team that I just have a lot of question marks for. I just don't know how good this team is going to be. I mean, are they going to be like a lot better compared to last year, or are they going to be like very bad compared to last year? Well, I think they'll be a little bit better, but I still think USC playing at home, I think they'll bounce back especially after a loss in Nebraska, and USC is the better team. So I think USC gets the win here, and that puts them now into a bowl game at 6-3. And then they play another home game against Iowa on November 15th. I did my Iowa video not even too long ago either, and I did say that USC I think will win this game just because Iowa has to travel out west and everything. I mean, this will be a pretty good Iowa team, but they just have a lot of depth issues. They don't really have a ton of depth on their roster, and that's really kind of the difference here. USC definitely I think is the more better team just because of their depth and everything. I do like the Iowa starting lineup and everything, but I just think USC is definitely the better team here, and plus playing at home, that's really the difference. So I think USC gets the win, and I got them improving to 7-3. And then they go on the road to play Oregon on November 22nd. This is an Oregon team, different quarterback obviously with Dante Moore taking over, and they have a lot of new faces that are going to have to take over as well. They lost so much talent from last year, but still, these are guys that are new faces that are going to step up right away. And plus, this game's in the month of November, so I think the Ducks guess new faces will be a lot better by this time. And also, playing on the road, that's a very tough place to play. I could expect a shootout here between these two teams, but defensively, Oregon is just too good on that side of the football. So I think USC struggles to score points in this game. So I think USC does fall to Oregon here. So that puts them now at 7-4. Going into the final game of the season, they will play UCLA at home on November 29th. Of course, another rivalry game here. It's kind of been, back and forth sometime between these two teams, and then sometimes USC kind of proves to be the better team. UCLA, though, Nico Amaliava taking over at quarterback. So you got two quarterbacks that are kind of, in the same, state and everything. So yeah, these two teams, I don't know if they're pretty even, though. Defensively, I think USC definitely has an advantage on that side of the football. UCLA definitely, I think, will be a little bit better on offense, but I think USC playing at home, especially after a tough loss to Oregon from last week, they come in fired up for this game because of the rivalry, of course. But yeah, they could be a little bit beat up, especially after playing Oregon from last week. So I wouldn't be surprised if UCLA did win this game. If this was on the road, I definitely would pick the Bruins to win. But I think playing at home, USC will get the win here. So I'm expecting a pretty close game here in this rivalry game. But I got to go with USC here to get the win over UCLA at the end of the day in this rivalry game. So I got USC finishing 8-4 in 2025. I think that's a pretty fair prediction for the Trojans, but I can see this team probably, possibly going 9-3. It wouldn't shock me if they did go 9-3 and be like a dark horse team in the Big Ten this year. This schedule kind of, gives them a chance. The schedule is kind of tough, but it's not really quite as brutal as it was from last year. I mean, Notre Dame and Nebraska and Illinois and Oregon are very tough places to play, so I think that's a pretty fair prediction. But don't be surprised if they probably did slip up, somewhere else, especially in these home games. They could probably slip up against Michigan. That's probably the most likely game I can see them slipping up in. I mean, they can probably go 7-5. That's probably their worst case scenario, and then 9-3 is their best case. But I'm going to go with 8-4 here for USC. So I think that's a pretty fair prediction. So give me your thoughts about USC down in the comments below, and also give me your prediction for this team. And do you agree or disagree with my prediction? Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.